people work on their self-worth? How do they, if they feel because of life and because of everything they've been through, they've got to this terrible shattered place of self-worth, how do they get to building process of feeling worthy and enough?
That's hard.
This
is the hard stuff. Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you.
If you really want to live in a lifestyle where you can wear what you want, have the colour hair you want, that's a big part of who you are. That's going to help you go on that path, and you can learn from this experience.
And that's exactly what I was saying to him. And literally, it was so. There's another example, I can't think off the top of my head what it was, but this prime example where he kept coming at me with stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just batting him back with, well, this is the actual truth, and this is how reality works. And he was just like, honestly,
mate.
and all these kids' belief systems. And then at the end, the teacher was talking and said, "You guys been awesome?" Because they had some of the questions they were asking were absolutely incredible, like genuinely.
It's great working with kids, isn't it?
Awesome.
It's great.
And then when the teacher says, "Like, you guys been awesome," like we might bring another someone back in to talk.
Awesome.
And then the guy said, "If it's not him, I'm not coming."
Oh, mate, that's awesome.
What he said, and he's like, "This guy's a G." Like,
yeah.
And honestly,
so have you emailed Ian yet, or
no, I'm doing it today.
Sending like stuff that you've done as well,
yeah.
like sending.
But before we leave, I'll show you what it is.
Wicked.
But like I said, it's just so like going in and seeing some of these kids and actually helping them, and they can actually feel that you're trying to help them.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. Like I made it very clear that I was talking. It's really funny because I was chatting away, and then one of the teachers came in the middle of my deep workship, and then she started to give her example. The kids literally were like,
yeah, mate.
Anyway, I've been recording this, by the way.
Oh, should we just keep that?
Let's keep it. I'll do an intro. It's just quite interesting.
It's filming
I
as well.
recorded it for like 1 minute, like 20. So
we've got 7 minutes of that.
So again, we don't have 7 minutes of audio. But
okay.
If we could, that'd be good. But we were talking. This is actually a really good vibe. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So again, if you're listening to this and we're rolling, then there you go. So I'm going to clap. Welcome back to another episode of the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you both mentally and physically become the best version of you. I'm your host, Daniel James, and today I've got Mr. Mikey Markham with me. How are we?
I'm very well, thanks, Dan. How are you, mate?
I'm right. We're just having a good chat. I don't actually know if it's going to be on the start of this podcast or not, so
I'm going to edit it in now.
Yeah, we'll edit it in if we can. But me and Mike were talking about, I was in a school yesterday, so obviously this is going to come out in a few weeks' time from when I've gone in. But it's my first time back in a school this year, and the kids at the school I was at, New College Leicester, you guys are absolutely awesome. Genuinely one of the best schools I've been to, and we were talking about why that was and basically how receptive some of the kids were. And we were talking about belief systems and basically just knocking down their belief systems, because at that age, they're kind of starting to mould their beliefs around the world. And one of the kids said to me, like I said, I don't know if you caught this before at the start, but basically said, I've got an answer for everything. And I kept saying to him, no, I don't have an answer for everything. The difference is like your belief systems are so weak that when you're coming at me with these belief systems, I'm giving you the facts and your house of cards is just falling down, and that's the difference. And it's just so amazing to actually see these lights turn on and actually have these kids be opened up to what's going on. And on one of them, I was talking about some really deep stuff. I can't remember what it was I was talking about how when you keep thinking a thought, that then becomes a belief. So belief is just a thought you keep on thinking. And then this kid mentioned something about changing your beliefs. And I said, well, how do you think you do it? And this one kid put his hand up and went, and he literally just explained it. And I was like, yes. I was like,
what did he say?
What?
Go on.
He basically was saying like, so you've got to change how you see yourself.
Yeah.
So you have to think about something positive and keep repeating it until it becomes a belief. And I literally was like, yes. I couldn't believe it. This kid, I was like, yeah. Like
you're doing it, you're saying it.
Mate,
yeah.
Unbelievable. And having some of the teachers on the break coming and finding me and saying, I came in on your assembly and it was incredible. Like, it was just... Honestly, like, fills my heart.
And do you know when you were saying about that house of cards and it come crumbling for him? Can you reflect to a moment in your life where you didn't know it was a closed belief system, but you found out by somebody else, but you're stuck in this way of thinking, and then they crumbled up for you? Have you got any moments of that?
I've got a few. The biggest one for me, and I use it as an example in schools as well, was when I was in history class. History teacher in front of the whole class told me I'd never amount to anything in my life. So if you look back at my life, football, starting my own business before the Prime Life projects, all the things in my life, whenever I've achieved any sort of success, I've stopped. So do you know that point where something good's about to happen?
I bet a lot of people can relate to this.
Yeah, so this example, prime example would have been when I did my 100th episode of this podcast, like literally amazing episode, everything's going amazing. Old me would have stopped. It's like, I'm on the cusp of something great now, or can't deal with this, I can't be successful. Stop.
That's
literally like me. That's me. I do it in football. Like literally, I've come back from America, got these amazing stats, life's going amazing, got offered a trial at Real Salt Lake, didn't even go and try.
Really?
Yeah. So last year in America.
What conversation were you having in your head
Mate,
then?
so basically when I left America, my stats were really, really good.
Yeah.
So I basically I basically emailed loads of MLS teams and I can't remember what the league below is teams, and basically said, here's all my stats, because they basically just care about stats.
Yeah,
they don't care if you're good. They care about
monkeys.
stats. And I was one of like top 10 goalkeepers in the country with my stats. And then Real Salt messaged saying, we're really interested in seeing you. Would you fly back over? And I didn't even entertain it. But I didn't know at the time what I was doing.
Self-doubt.
Literally, I was just like, oh, it's in my head. I justified it. My beliefs were that even if I was borderline or slightly better than an American goalkeeper, if I fly over there, they're going to have to pay for my visa. They have to pay for my accommodation. They have to pay for all of these expenses. When actually they can get a goalkeeper that maybe he's not just as good, but they can make him as good, and they don't have to pay as much.
And what do you?
That was my justification.
Do you attribute that to a protection mode where you didn't want to go through the pain of rejection?
Mate, probably,
well?
yeah, honestly, yeah. And I've not spoke about it really until I went to that school. It's the first time I really spoke about it. It's one of the things where it's really bizarre. The stuff I'm doing right now about my self-image and belief systems, it's made me, when I was in America, I really suppressed that time in my life.
Yeah.
Like when I came back to this country, I literally did not talk about it for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Like, and if I did, it'd be like a comment, then I'd snap back out of it, because the pain of me leaving, like there was clearly some trauma there.
Yeah.
That I didn't want to talk about, but now I'm doing all this stuff, I'm literally remembering so much, and it's quite interesting. Like it's good and bad. Like, there's so many things that come into my mind. Even for example, going to Barbados, the TV was American, and I couldn't watch the TV. I had to turn the TV. It was like, it literally triggered me. Like I literally felt so uncomfortable and weird. Like watching this American, and I was like,
reliving
wow,
part
I've
of your
not seen
life
this for 12 years. I literally had to stop and like just go in the shower. It really like threw me out. And then watching American football, and again,
cold
not watching,
shower.
mate, it was bizarre.
Yeah,
I can't explain it, but it really made me realise that there's some stuff that I haven't really addressed. So again, just working my way through that. But yeah, it was a great time in my life, but I only remember the negatives.
It feels rewarding though, doesn't it, when you're going into schools and you're giving and equipping them with stuff that you had to go through a horrible, tenacious, painful journey of, and they're learning it so early on. I have that feeling a lot where you're going like, oh, I wish I had this when I was younger, but it's nice that we're going and delivering that.
And that's what it is. And that's fundamentally what it is. The kids just, and the teacher said that the kids don't have people like this coming in.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, cool, I'm glad that could be that. And I said that the fact that they were asking such good questions, they were genuinely really good questions. Some of them were asking like how much I could bench, which I found hilarious.
Yeah.
But they're genuinely just asking. So one guy was talking about money and stuff like this, and
Yeah.
I just explained to them about how money actually works.
I wish school was set up as like the school of life. Do you know what I mean? And real, genuine importance rather than sort of just facts and regurgitation. It's
My biggest thing.
who are you? That's
exactly
what we need
it.
to start ingraining into people.
My biggest thing when going to schools, when I'm talking to them, I say that every single person here is a genius. You don't realise that you're a genius. I said the problem is the school's not designed for some creative people. Like I'm so creative with my thinking. I'm so creative, but again, that's again part of being dyslexic. It makes you super creative. I think
Yeah,
the same way.
man.
But school doesn't really advocate that. But
It's not designed for that.
No, but that then doesn't mean you don't try. And what I try and say to the kids is like, you may really be struggling at school. I was like, that's absolutely fine. Like, it's okay to struggle, but don't just sack it off, because what you're doing is you think you're sticking it to the teachers and you think you're sticking it to the school. But at the end of the day, the school's still going to be there and the teachers are still going to have a job. So the only person you're really sticking it to is yourself. And when you see the look on their faces, they're like, oh yeah.
It's like that person, do you know, when they didn't want to go to PE and then they just stand on the pitch cold and they're shivering and they're in pain. It's like, you could, even though you don't know the rules, or you don't want, just run around, have a laugh, kick the ball,
Exactly.
aim that way. But yeah, they used to really annoy me, those people, because then they ruin your game slightly. You try and play it, but you pass them the ball, and then they're just like, I'm not playing. You go, I want to include you though.
Yeah, but this is not the topic we're meant to be talking about, but it's an interesting thing though.
It's a good chat.
So what are we going to be talking about today?
Today it's about cutting out toxic people, and it is still relevant because we're having sort of belief systems ingrained into us, and I suppose there is nuance in this in terms the best word ever. But it's in terms of, do you just cut out toxicity from your life, like people, or do you find ways of working with them? Like, example for me, and I think a lot of us have parents or close people in our lives, and you have this idea, I'm supposed to love and be around them and all this, that we have concepts to that. Me particularly for my mum. But every time we get together, and I'm trying my absolute best, and maybe it's the over trying that can be the problem, but to just make sure, and then we're sort of on eggshells, that it's a nice encounter. so quickly it just comes crumbling. And she's quite invasive. Like, we live so in close proximity, so she can just come into our house whenever she wants and then make judgments. She's like, it's so messy in here. It's like, you don't have to live in it. This is our house. Like, you shouldn't be just coming over here, invading our space. Space invader. But
Remember them crisps?
oh, mate, remember the game.
Yeah.
But it is true, because with that, then I'm always in my head then. I'm going off in my day, and all I'm thinking about is, oh, I wish this and I wish that, and why can't she just see it in my eyes? But then I'm sacrificing all my happiness then, and my peace and my contentment, because I'm just in about, I wish she was more like this. So then it's on this spectrum of, do you cut it out your life? Do you have uncomfortable conversations and hope something changes? But are they willing and wanting to change as well? So there's so much scope in there. Like, have you had experience with that in people that you love, or quote unquote supposed to, people would say, have in your life, but had to cut ties or anything?
I'm gonna try and break down what you said there, because I think a lot of people can relate to that, and then I'll go back onto to my thing if you bring
yeah, jump in.
But if people remember the Setting Boundaries workshop. That if you've not checked that out, go and check that out. Setting boundaries and the energy, protecting your energy is a big thing. But fundamentally, there, it's understanding. I did a video on this on my reels of the day. It's what you're trying to do is change and control someone else.
Yeah,
and that's where the problem occurs. And we have no right to change or want to change or try to change somebody else. So what's happening is your mum is your mum. Like, she's set in her ways, the grooves are really, really deep in there. And the problem is, it's like how you want it to be versus how it actually is. Like expectations versus reality. That is the problem. And as you sort of said there, you haven't communicated with her what you actually want. So what's happening is, she maybe has no idea she's done anything wrong. In her mind, she's trying to be a good mother. So she's like, oh, I'm going to go check in on my son. And she's seen some stuff and it's like, oh, tidy this up. So in her head, she's being a lovely mother. In your eyes, she's invading your space.
Yeah.
But until you sort of have the conversations, be like, listen, mum, I know exactly what you're trying to do here, but X, Y, and Z, you're making me feel this way. And that's the key thing here. You've mentioned that she makes you feel, you're making yourself feel.
Yeah.
So again, I know you know this, but people listen to this, like, no one can make you feel anything. Only you can make you feel a certain way. So if someone is triggering you, they're not triggering you, you're triggering yourself. So it's asking why.
What is that? Offence is not... offence is taken, not given.
Exactly. So basically, it's like if you say something to me, your words don't mean anything. They're just words.
Yeah.
What's happening is I'm creating an image in my head, and then what I associate with that is then causing me to feel something. So yes, you may have the intention to make me feel something, but I can only feel it if I allow myself to feel it. Because you can't make me feel anything. My feelings are my own. And that's a key thing to understand there. Like, your feelings are your own. So it's understanding, why is that triggering you? Because potentially what it's doing is it's taking you back to childhood. So that's the reason why it's triggering you. It's triggering you because it's making you feel like you're 12 years old again. Your mum's coming in and telling you off. That's a you problem, not your mum's problem. Because at that age, you had to listen to your mum because you kind of got some sort of, your mum's got some parental responsibilities, but now you've got a voice.
Yeah.
And then potentially what's causing the issue is you want to say something, but then you're not because you're afraid of the conflict. But there's conflict anyway. But at least if you've said your piece, and this is what I'm trying to explain, like, you have to communicate what you want. Whether or not you get the outcome is irrelevant. But right now, there's that tension, and you're not giving her the opportunity to actually change that. And again, it goes to anyone. I'm talking to you in front of me, but people listening to this, it's like you're not giving her the opportunity to actually change. So people get bothered by this toxicity. It's like, okay, well, first of all, what is the toxicity, and why is it bothering you? Because at the end of the day, if someone's doing something and you're finding it toxic, why are you finding it toxic? Because right now, I could come in here and I could start going,
yeah, don't do that.
Okay? But right now, that's just how I drink my drink. That's not how I drink my drink.
Yeah.
But that could literally go straight through you. But then what's happening is, you've not told me, so I'm going to keep doing it. And what's going to happen is, you're going to leave here, you're going to go home and tell Chrissy, God, I've done it.
Yeah.
And then you bitching me out and all sorts of stuff. And every time you come in here, straight away, you're going to feel a certain way about me because of this thing I do. But I've got no idea that me doing that's triggering you.
And it's the art of communication.
Exactly. But if you say to me, listen, Dan, do you know what, mate, like, that's really bothering me.
Yeah.
We have a laugh and joke about it. Would you mind just not doing that? And I then carry on doing it, that's then a problem.
And I suppose that's where I was going to get to in the chat as well. But also, it's the art of the communication there. Like, there's ways about doing it, and then you can let that just explode and say it in a certain way, and then you may do it to irritate me more eventually. But if I've done it in a loving and compassionate way, then you might think about being a bit more empathic on that. But okay, I love what you've said there.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
And mate, everything you've said is
get bothered.
It's golden.
They get bothered, but they're not giving the person the opportunity.
So that's step one, because that's really wonderful where you're at there. So then let's say, again, with that loved one, and we're setting boundaries and we're having these conversations that are really integral and important, What about then when it persists and the boundaries start getting disrespected or they're not able to meet them? Where do you go from
So I think
here?
you've got to actually then set the boundary first. So we spoke about this, like, why is it bothering you? But then the first thing is, like you said, communicate it. You've got to communicate it clearly and directly. And here's a key thing that people don't do. You've got to communicate it to the level of where the person's at.
Yeah.
So, for example, we spoke about this beforehand about Russell Brand
Yeah.
example. So, if you're going to come talk to me about setting boundaries with this, and you start talking to me using big fancy words,
Don't Russell Brand
gone.
it.
Yeah, I'm gone. I'm not paying any attention.
Yeah.
And likewise, I say this very clearly. Again, if people are in a male-female relationship, and if you're a female listening to this, trying to communicate to a male, you think we're not listening most of the time because when you're not communicating on our level, you really need to dumb it down for us. Like,
And I suppose, and also the cadence and the way you deliver it,
Yeah.
because like maybe going to your partner and Andy Frizella like attack it,
or being like a mum. Talking like a mum.
Yeah.
And again, if guys don't like that, if you're trying to, and again, even if what you're saying is completely true, if you come in with that certain tone, like I'm being told off like I'm a little boy, I'm not paying any attention to you.
So
none.
It's the communication, the way of delivering it, and how you're going to set them boundaries, and it usually comes back down to coming with love, like coming with a kind heart toward
100%.
it.
And it's hard to do. That's the hardest part. Communication is one of the hardest steps of actually setting that boundary. Like to actually communicate that. But you first got to know what do you actually want. So the first stage is, what do you want?
Yeah.
Out of the situation, what would be the ideal thing for you? The ideal thing for you would be that your mum knocks on the door.
Yeah.
So she's just wondering, she knocks on the door. Cool. So you're just explaining that's what this is, and then also explaining why it's bothering you. So again, first of all, make it very clear, what is your ideal outcome? Because again, at the end of the day, if it's her sort of farm and she's whatever, I don't know what the situation is, whatever it is, if it's her space, and to an extent, it's like there's got to potentially be some compromise. It's like in a relationship. So like with you and Chrissy, like if you've got something it's like this is how it should be, and you're completely disregarding her, then you're then becoming toxic and then potentially triggering her. Where actually if you're saying like this is what I'd like, what do you like? And I've used the example before, like if you're saying like going out for some food and you're like, well, I want a pizza, and she's like, I want an Indian, and you're like, okay, we're having pizza. That's not how you set boundaries.
No.
That's dictatorship, and that's not how it should be. So then she's like, well, I really want Indian. You're like, okay, like, so how about this week we go for Indian, but then next week you have to go for pizza. Compromise. So you've got to compromise at some point. So once you've set that, you communicate it, and then as you said, then what happens when people start to abuse that? That's when then you've got a decision to make. So you've got to defend that boundary. So you've then also got to remind people, because if people are setting their habits. So for example, if your mum's always done this and she's done it for 30 odd years, how old are you?
29.
For 29 years. So she's done it for 29 years. Like you're then saying to her that she's got to undo 29 years of habit. That's not going to happen overnight. So maybe she'll do, again, this happens in relationships all the time. You set that boundary and people stick to it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it goes again.
Yeah.
Then after that 2 weeks, when it slips, most people will let it slide. And then it builds up again. Well, actually, as soon as it happens, Mum, we spoke about that. Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. And then she goes out and knocks. Do you know what I mean? And then it's fine again. Then next time, then, cool. Then she starts to get a bit better. Then if she doesn't do it, so then you've got a decision to make. Because if someone literally is, for whatever reason, abusing that and has got no ability or willingness to actually change, and it really is triggering you, something like that maybe isn't going to trigger you that much, but if it is affecting your whole day,
it's a good standing example though, because there's a lot that could be done in that scenario.
Rather than most people just want to get this end result, like this person's toxic, and they build up this story and this narrative about this person being toxic. Yeah, but they may be 100%. I'm not saying they're not toxic, but what responsibility can you take for this situation? I talk about this all the time. Take responsibility.
Ownership,
because what's happening is you're blaming this person, situation, or this thing, and you're trying to change it, and you have no right or ability to do that. The only thing you can do is control yourself, and then by you changing yourself, hopefully that'll change that situation. And then if it doesn't, you then have the ability to then remove yourself from that situation, because at least you can say you tried.
Yeah.
Whereas rather than just being like cutting that person off, they might have done, in their eyes, again, they've done nothing wrong. So if you just stop talking to your mum, that's going to be devastating for her, because, again, she's doing it out of pure love. For her, that could be her purest form of love, and really how she shows love to you.
And unconscious around it.
And she's literally there, like, she's just been a good mum, and then you cut her off, that like, break her heart, like, absolutely devastating for her, but you haven't done anything to try and rectify that situation.
Yeah.
But sometimes it comes to that, you've then got to make a decision. Now, again, she's just an example, I'm not saying you're going to cut your mum out your life, but let's say it really is triggering you that much. Let's say every time she does that, it takes you 3-4 days to recover. Let's say it's that bad, this kind of thing. You've then got a decision to make. And you've done all these things, communicated it, properly explained it, and she's like, yeah, I get it. She keeps doing it. You're defending your boundaries. She keeps doing it. You've then got to stand your ground there, and it's like she's calling you bluff, maybe. So are you going to leave? Are you going to actually cut it off, or are you going to stay? That's on you. Especially when it comes to family members, this is the hard part, because just because people are family doesn't mean they have to stay in your life, and that's what people don't seem to understand. It doesn't mean you cut them off totally, but maybe only see them on birthdays and Christmases. Okay, but you set that boundary, you set that distance. You don't want to engage on a daily basis because it triggers you. You have every right to do that. Just because someone's your real relative, you don't owe them anything.
Yeah.
And that's why we kind of get stuck in this cycle with this. But then if it really is bothering you and then you decide to stay, that's then a you problem. You then can't moan about this toxic situation because you've now got choice. You either stay or you go. And I'm not saying going's easy, by the way, for a single second. Like it's hard. I get that. But if you're then staying in that situation, knowing full well, this is knowing, not being in ignorance, because again, we stay in bad relationships and we're kind of stuck with that. And I get that. And it's really easy. What's that Stockholm syndrome where you kind of like get stuck, you almost like know the fact you're being abused.
It's like Big
and
Brother
you want
style.
to, and you want to sort of you stay in there because it's comfortable. So I do get that. So I understand, again, to use your word, there's nuance to it. But fundamentally, you then have to make that decision. This is not good for me, and then step out of it.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to. So you have to understand, is stepping out of it worse than staying in it? And as a human being, not just you, people in general listen to this, like everyone's got the opportunity to be, everyone has the right to feel amazing. And if someone's abusing that, you don't need that in your life.
No.
And that's for anyone. But you've got to there's got to be certain steps to do it. You can't just cut people off. And the first thing is to look at yourself. What are you doing? It's a prime example. If you go to your mum's house and you start doing stuff there, use this as an example. You go there and you use a coffee and you don't wash up, you just leave it all on the side, so you're being messy.
Yeah.
And then your mum comes in to tell you off.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, pick up your clothes.
Yeah.
You then create the story in your head that your mum's just coming in and doing this and da-da-da. But actually, you've kind of done something that's kind of started that loop, if that makes sense. If you hadn't done that, she then wouldn't have done this. So I think the first step that we always talk about is actually, is there anything that you can do that you can take responsibility for, to take back control and take back power and be like, I could handle this better by doing this. Yeah. Try that and see what happens. Our good friend Paul Cope talks about change the dance. So you're stuck in this dance. You're doing this one thing, then they respond, and then you respond, and they respond. If you change that dance, if you start to do something completely different, take responsibility, completely unexpected, they will probably change. If they don't, that then tells you, right, communication, da da da. Does that make sense?
Takes it to the nut. Of course it does, man. Yeah, 100%. I got a friend at the minute as well. Went out for the first time in ages, and it was quite affirming actually. Went Hockley Hustle, this nice night out. We used to go for nights out, and Chrissy had to get home. I'm like, I'll just see how it all goes and unfolds. And then I went out with the old mates, and they were just having the same stories, and it was all about chasing substance or something, and all the old times. I thought, oh, this is so whatever dull to me now, which was really nice actually. It was relieving, like, oh, I'm moving on in my life and transition, leveling up. But there was one person, and it was about substance, and this friend was just always on the Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and if they go into the weekend sessions, just uses her as a bit of a, she's got money, so she'll get like stuff in, and then he just takes it and takes it and takes it. And like, but also she's enabling that. She's given an excuse to it now, and she's lowered her boundaries so low, she allows it in. But when it gets to like, do you know when people had a few drinks and the truth starts seeping out, and it really affects her and really upsets her. I'm like, but also, like you had Jamie Booth on talking about addiction, and sometimes all you're doing in that enabling process is, if they're on that motorway, is taking them into the lay-bys every so often, letting them be there for a bit, helping them out. But if you got to go and hit that wall, so it is hard. But I think if you've had them conversations like we've just been saying, and it just keeps on persisting, keeps on happening, you do have to let them go and hit that wall themselves and just remove yourself.
It's also down to self-worth as well.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a situation when it comes to substance, but in a situation, if it is toxic, do you think you're worthy of not being triggered and not feeling that way? Because if you don't think you're worthy of that, you're going to stay in it.
Yeah.
So it comes down to actual self-worth.
Yeah.
Like, because if you, again, just using an example because you came in front of me, like if you feel like you're worth being shouted at, and that's your self-worth, then when your mum does it to you, that's what you think you deserve.
So good question here, like, how do people work on their self-worth? How do they, if they feel because of life and because of everything they've been through, they've got to this terrible shattered place of self-worth, how do they get to this building process of feeling worthy and enough?
That's hard. This is the hard stuff. So again, it's completely individualized. So again, I'm not going to start rattling things off for like everyone's got to do it, because everyone's completely unique. But fundamentally, what's happening is, on a subconscious level, like underneath the surface, you've got habits and beliefs and stuff like that that have been put upon you. Now, the only way that these things can get put upon you is if you put them there or something major happens. So if some big major event happens, that then gets planted in your subconscious, and that's kind of the program that you run off. But normally what's happened is, again, we spoke about beliefs before, these beliefs are just a thought you keep on thinking. So what's happened is your self-worth is, let's say I'm using this as a prime example, so just a random example, is that, again, for me, an ex-girlfriend when I was 15, I can't remember if you shared this story or not, but I'm going to share it. I can't remember if I did it on the sex episode, I can't remember, when I had a girlfriend when I was 15, 16, and that's the one that started me off on my manhole days. Well, if I didn't, well, here we go. Here's the story. It might be your story. Okay, we're going with it now. So, when, again, if you've not listened to my story, I can't remember what episode it is, but I basically share about my depression, my sex addiction. But fundamentally, when I was doing this work, it all came down to when I was, it would have been 15 or 16, it would have been 15, I think. And basically, there was a really, really hot girl that went to another school. And one of my best mates fancied her, but she fancied me. So I basically broke code and basically started going out with her. She's absolutely stunning. Like, I remember, like, I could not believe that she fancied me. Like, I'd get 2 buses to go and see her, so I'd drive into town, then from town to go see her. Like, and literally I was like, this girl's insane. Had a great, like, literally I was with her for about a month or 2. Again, we did some like stuff, like messed around, and then one day her mum went out to Asda or something. She's like, right, put a condom on, have sex with me. I freaked the hell out. I'd never had sex before, and I freaked out, like, proper, like, because again, do you like how sex is built up as you're a kid, and it's like, if you do it wrong, your dick's going to drop off, or everyone's got
yours didn't, or mine did.
Or like everyone's got an STD. Do you only put like the fear of God into you in sex ed? Yeah, and that was me, genuinely. I was like a proper, and I was like, oh, like, so I freaked out, and I said like, oh, like, no. Anyway, this is again the story that I'm telling myself in my head, because again, it's a long time ago, but in my head, then what happened is she did break up with me like the next day, and then she got with another guy. And what happened was, this again, factual truth, she was on camera. I was on MSN Messenger, remember? MSN Messenger. And I literally remember it. I remember she was on a landing, and she was there with a boyfriend who was older, and she said, I'm with him because he'll have sex with me and you won't.
Wow.
So then in my head, that belief was like, oh, so hot girls only like guys that have sex.
Yeah.
And that's what then sent me on that cascade of, I've got to have loads of sex, because that's what hot girls like. Genuinely, that's what it was. And it's so bizarre. Yeah. So that was a belief then for me. So then going back to that, like my then self-worth, like that was something for me, like my self-worth was completely crippled and ruined, because like my self-worth was like, well, people are only going to like value me based on this sexual thing. So again, going back to what we're saying here about breaking this all down. So I then got this belief system that's been put there. So that was quite a traumatic event for me, and I remember it. So I got then put that in there. And then also I'd been saying the story in my head. So but through repetition, I'd be saying, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I am this, I am this. And then that then goes into my subconscious. I then start to then live through this belief system and this self-image that I've got of myself. Yeah. So then I see myself as, well, I've got to sleep with those people. Again, like I said on the sex episode, it's basically just self-abuse. I was abusing myself to try and get people to like me. All I fundamentally wanted was love. That's all I wanted. And again, I've said this before, the reason I struggle so much with sex is because the way that I receive love is physical touch, quality time, and words of affirmation. And when you're having sex with someone, you get all 3 of those things. Yeah. And that's literally, so for me, it's like Christmas.
It's like
that's
cocaine.
Mate, it was 100%. That's what it was. So that was all from my belief systems. So basically, with self-image, the self-worth, there's things that you've either been saying to yourself constantly, and you're now holding them there as fact, and you're living your life through them. So when things happen, you're putting them through this filter that you've created. So if you've got this filter of you're not good enough, this thing will happen that says you are good enough. Yeah. You then put that event through the filter. I can't accept that. Can't accept that. So if you've got this thing of I'm ugly, and then you come along, it's like, oh, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Boom, goes through the filter, reject it. Because you can't accept it, because that's your self-worth. But that's been put there by either someone else or you, and you're just running through it. So basically what you've got to do for this self-worth is figure out, what is this filter? What is this thing that's there? Like paradigms. What are these paradigms? Which basically just systems that everything you do runs through. Yeah. And it's hard, because you may not even be aware that you've got them. But you have got them, whether you're aware of it or not. Now, again, you've got to look at the results in your life. Whatever area that is, whether it's finances, relationships, jobs. If the results of your life aren't what you want, that then tells me that your habits and your beliefs around that are faulty. Because what's going on in your subconscious determines your behaviours. Yeah. Your behaviours then determine your results. So if you want to know what's going on a subconscious level, look at the results you're getting in your life, because they'll be a direct reflection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. Bringing the unconscious conscious.
And it's hard. So again, I can't really give how do people do it, but that's fundamentally what we've got to do. And it's what I work with my clients. And again, I did a whole workshop on this yesterday about, again, so this tells you how long any of my clients listening tells you how long ago this was recorded. Did it about self-image and actually breaking that down, because it's a hard thing to do. Yeah. And there's so much stuff people have to let go and release. But if you don't know that you're holding it, and this is the key thing, and this is why it's so important when I go into schools and we go into schools to talk about this, is because these kids are holding these beliefs so tightly from that age that they're going to adulthood still holding it. And what happens is their parents maybe failed at something in life, So then they don't try. They then pass that on to their kids. So these kids are holding not just their beliefs, but their parents' beliefs or their grandparents' beliefs. It's been passed on through generations. So you have to identify, what is this belief? Where's it come from? Yeah. So for me, once I then broke this down, like, do all hot girls like guys that have loads of sex? No. No. That's not what, again, my actual experience of life, that is not what the reality is. Now, to some girls, absolutely. But the reality of it is, me sleeping with the amount of people I did is not attractive to most people. You know what I mean? Unless you really value sex, which some people do, which is awesome. But for the vast majority, it's not.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I had to really break this down, because I had a lot of shame about this. But I now hold no shame about that, because that's how I am as a person. I'm making sense with this.
Mate, 100%.
But I had a lot of shame, and going through this work, I had to release that shame, because that's also something that's holding me back. The shame about all this stuff. And when I realised it's my journey, it's completely natural. I wasn't hurting anyone, I wasn't harming anyone. It's fine.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are holding things like that, where they've got so much shame and guilt, they just need to let that go.
Mate, I mean, from everything we've been chatting about, I suppose the reason a lot of people allow toxicity into their life is because they don't value themselves, is what we're saying. And there's no self-worth there. So the most important thing, what I'm feeling we're saying is, like, first of all, you've got to really work on yourself. Because we use me as an example, and I put that example across because it gives the conversation and gives a bit of good example. But I've worked on myself. So realistically, in that moment, for me now, I'm kind of comfortable to actually have them conversations. I know where she's at, and I've rationalised it to the point of I can live in a symbiotic relationship with my mum because I got respect for her. I know who I am, and she doesn't actually affect me in such a way that she used to. So because of those conversations we've had, I've managed to do that in my life. But I've got self-worth. But for some people, and where I was at, because I had no self-worth, and I felt I deserved this attack in some way in my subconscious, that's where I didn't know what I wanted, I didn't know who I was, so that'd come into my life, and then it'd just be this ferocious,
it'd be on autopilot. What you're used
violent
to.
feeling of, she's just attacking me, this is what's happening. So the uncomfortability lies in there. I think the reason as well, though, we allow it to persist is because we're so scared, we're living on fear, that, that means I've got to either cut ties or not cut ties. It doesn't even have to be that simple. It's like, okay, maybe immediate, you cut ties, but you have to do the working on yourself. But then when you've done that working on yourself and you've spent a bit of time on the building blocks, then you go back in with a new mindset and you can actually bring a bit of compassion, empathy towards that person, and you change the way you're looking at them.
Especially if someone's been really toxic. Like, and we talk about something really with yourself just then about someone coming in and talking about your clothes, like your mum coming in to talk about your clothes.
Yeah.
But some people have experienced some really, like, let's say, fucked up shit.
Yeah, man.
Especially if it's from a parent or something. Once you can do this work and look at that situation, like, what kind of thing must this person have gone through in their life to think that this is acceptable? And then what you do is you just completely changes how you see that person. You actually then, not coming from a place of feeling sorry for them, to forgive them, but you just have a bit of compassion to be like, wow. Like, because again, if you've done the work on yourself, you understand what you've unpicked, and then you realise, wow, this person's got a lot of stuff there. Yeah, they've got this person, like, this is not my mum, she's an example. My mum has gone through so much stuff to be treating me like that. Wow. And then straight away, it just changes how you feel it. It doesn't justify what they've done. It doesn't forgive what they've done. No, you're not doing that, but it just gives you a different perspective. You're looking at it rather than being like, she's a piece of shit, she's horrible, she's this. Like,
it dampens it, doesn't it? It makes it more gentle.
Yeah, it's like, wow, what must she have gone through to think this is love? What, like, if that's how she thinks love is, what must happen to her when she was growing up? Because that's all it is. People just, how they think, like, what their parents did to them, they kind of pass it on because that's what they think love is.
And even, it doesn't have to be looking at a real trauma they went through, but just that sort of conditioning, understanding the conditioning that they've been built into this box. So whatever they're dishing out to you is the best that they've got in front of them, and that's all that people are muddled and they're trying their best. Like, people can be completely wrong and completely off the mark, but most people are not horrible people. What's happened is somewhere along the line, something's gone drastically wrong, and they've developed a coping mechanism, and so people are so unaware. Most people don't think. Most people do not have the ability to actually think. Because if they were doing something and you say, would you choose to do that? The answer would be no. Okay, so then you're on autopilot. And most people walk around on autopilot.
The problem is their switch has been set to not good.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. So what's the difference
true,
what's the difference between good and evil?
Yeah.
It's just thoughts. Because actions come from thoughts. So what's happened is that somewhere along the line, for an evil person, their thoughts have changed. And again, it's just gradually. Because then we start to think of something negative, something else comes on top of it. So all it is just a bad thought pattern. And where's that come from? And again, it's then who you're surrounding yourself with. And if you're so inside your own head, you then create this world where you think this thing is acceptable, and nothing's going to change that.
Did I tell you my story of being in South Africa where I found this beautiful quote, and it was through statues?
No.
I told you. Okay, I just
you love a story. Go for it,
mate. It goes to that exact thing, but it was quite powerful. And do you know the time they were tearing down statues? I had a thought on it that was quite polar to a lot of people because of this experience I had in South Africa. But I remember I was in Pretoria, so a small place, awesome. And then I went to this really small little town in Pretoria because it was my day off. And there was an art exhibition on, but they'd erected, great word, loads of statues. And the first one I came to, shit you not, Adolf Hitler. I was like, okay. And I went around and there was Stalin, and I thought, I'm not sure on this town.
You're the wrong venue.
This is not for me. But then as I'm going on a bit more, it's Nelson Mandela, and that there's all big, powerful figures in history, and that they're all dotted about. But then if you stand back a bit, you see that they're all facing one another. Oh, sorry. They're all facing one another. And then on the little plaques, on every single one, so Hitler, Stalin, Mandela, it said the same thing. And I went and looked, and it said, the line between good and evil runs through every human heart. And they were staring each other down, and it was this really profound, beautiful moment. And it lay in me there. I was like, wow, it's all choice. You've got a choice on what you want to make.
But you don't realise this choice. This is also the thing with this. Like, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, I think, is basically at some point, Hitler genuinely thought he was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
He genuinely thought that everything that he
Zohab's
did...
podcast.
Yeah. Everything that he was doing, he genuinely thought that he was doing the right thing.
Good, yeah.
He was so warped that, again, his self-image, again, this filter, the filter that everything was going through was warped. But he genuinely thought that what he was doing was the correct thing. Obviously, we as normal human beings realised it was completely wrong, but it didn't start that way.
No.
It started with one thing, then it builds up, and in the end, that's how, quote-unquote, evil is formed.
Yeah.
Like, Hitler was not born evil. Like things would happen, and a thought pattern would have happened, and that was it. That one thought pattern led to another, and it just so becomes so warped. It's like that saying: stick a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. Put a frog in cold water and slowly turn it up, it'll boil alive. That's basically what happens. You don't realise what's going on.
Yeah.
And again, same thing when people go into abusive relationships. When they step out of it, they're like, wow, all the signs. But when you're in it, you can't see it happening. You have no idea that it's happening.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. Just again, it's how narcissists work. Just slowly turn the heat up, slowly have the gaslighting in, and before you know it, you've been boiled alive. You have no idea. But then when you're away from it, you look back and it's like, wow, this was so obvious. And then you then again, self-image, self-worth. You then start beating yourself up and be like, why am I so stupid? Why do I allow this? Not realizing this person is very good at what they do, either consciously or unconsciously. Because again, if they had narcissistic parents, they then learned that pattern probably through them. So for them, probably didn't have to consciously think about it. It's just what they do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Gone a bit off tangent.
So no, what I'm gonna do on our episodes together now, because we do go on so many tangents.
Bring it back in. You summarise it.
No,
we did a good job of that. It was good.
I'm gonna get you to just take some real tools, techniques, and takeaways for everything we've been talking, because there is so much. So what you can summarise there from everything we've been talking about?
To summarise it, when it comes to removing yourself or removing a person from toxic situations, first thing is look at yourself and take any sort of to look at yourself. Like, are you contributing to this in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
Because it starts with you. You can't change anyone or anything. It starts with you. What can you change? And again, it takes time. So again, give yourself a bit of grace, compassion. Like, you're not going to change yourself overnight, and it can be hard to realise that actually you're responsible for some of these things that's going on.
Yeah.
Hard to swallow. But again, take responsibility. Then actually, if that doesn't change anything, communicate what you actually want. Ask yourself, what do you actually want? What's the ideal outcome? Communicate it properly, directly, and from a good, loving place.
Yeah.
Set the boundary, defend the boundary, and if people keep abusing that, keep defending it. And if you need to, remove yourself actually do some work on yourself so you can heal, get over the situation, figure out why this thing's triggering you, because that's important. Why is it triggering you? Why is it bothering you? Work on that, remove that, and then see if you can get back into that situation on a small little thing, if that's possible.
Yeah,
you may
and
need
integrate it into your life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you may need to completely cut that person off, but maybe it's just see them at Christmas. We're using family because it's an easy thing, example, but even like with friends, and maybe just see them once a fortnight, or rather than every single day, whatever it is, just slowly like set that boundary and just drip feed it in, and just see if you can deal with it and all that sort of stuff. And once you change, normally the person will change. And like you said with your friends, you went into a situation, you were a completely different person.
Yeah.
You went back into the situation, you realised, I don't like this. So now you won't then put yourself back in that situation because you've realised this isn't really for me.
Yeah, and then,
or you do it at Christmas.
Mate, bang, I was just going to literally say that. It was illuminating to see that. And we're all probably, 29's that age where you're maturing and you're going on into that different stage of your life. But I probably will get to a point where it's like, actually, there was little elements that I can tickle over there, but I know it's not the real me. So I think you've summarised that beautifully, mate. I really enjoyed that episode.
Awesome.
Yeah,
where can people find out more information about you?
Rhythmical Mike, the old farm boss, camera Mike.
Listing all of these things popping up.
Yeah, what have I done? I give myself loads of work. What about you, mate? You're new now.
There we go. So my new thing, Instagram is Daniel_James_coaching. You can find me there. And again, if you took any value from today's episode, don't forget to like and share with a friend. Until next time, take it easy.
Peace.